Welcome to this webinar on strategies and resources for strong grant commercialization plans. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. This presentation is made possible by funding through the TEDCO Incubator Assistance Fund. And a special thank you goes out to TEDCO for funding this seminar and supporting the Maryland startup community. Part 1 covered commercialization plans, section 1 through 3. Here in part 2 of this presentation, we're going to cover parts 4 through 7 of the commercialization plan, and we will wrap up with some additional considerations and resources. Okay, patents. Before filing your SBIR application, minimally file a provisional patent application on your technology. It's likely that your patent filing is going to be your primary barrier to entry, and you absolutely need to ensure that your IP ownership rights are clear prior to filing for the SBIR. Minimally obtain an option to license if the patents are not owned by you. In the SBIR application, you can use language, for example, to the best of our knowledge, based on our own keyword searches of the USPTO and the WIPO databases, we will not require a license to additional technology patents. So this is the type of language you can use in lieu of a freedom to operate opinion, which could be quite expensive for you at this time. In your intellectual property section, you should describe your intellectual property portfolio. This includes your patents, any trademarks, trade secrets, and the URL of your website. Discuss your intellectual property protection strategy. Talk about when you're going to file your patent life, when you expect your patent might expire. Discuss your geographies that you're going to file your patent in. If your patent application has published, please include the WO number. And if you have done a freedom to operate study, please include the results of that. And also mention who your law firm is. You should do a patent landscape. You have free search engines available to you at the USPTO and WIPO, Free Patents Online, Google Patent Search, and Octomine.com. I want to highlight the free source patentinspiration.com. This website gives you great analysis tools that produce very nice and colorful figures that are very insightful. So please check out that site. And then if you're really excited about this, you can go to the pay-to-play sites. These include Derwent Thompson Routers, Orbit at Questo, and Microsoft PatBase. But honestly, I think you'll find all the tools that you need in patentinspiration.com. In the finance section of the SBIR, you should talk about how you're going to raise funds to cover your project. This slide is from a recommended book called The Life Science Executives Fundraising Manifesto, and this is from 2014. Notice that while in the past we really only thought about raising money from family and friends and credit cards at the very earliest R&D stages, now you should really consider getting early money from large pharma, family offices, foundations, and angels. The point is that the SBIR funding should be a rational element within your larger funding strategy. It's important to make a figure that illustrates your timeline for fundraising and how your raises correlate with your business and development milestones and revenues, if any, as well as partnering events. So here's a figure, an example of a long-term strategic plan on how the SBIR and STTR money is going to be leveraged, as well as other funding sources that get the product to market. Making these figures can be time-consuming, so here are some tools to help you out. Acorn is an image editor software that's available for Macintosh. The timelines can be made at smartdraw.com, and flowcharts can be made at draw.io. It's important for you to look at market comps for understanding what the value of the technology might be. So search the web to identify market comps for companies similar to yours that were acquired or sold. This will provide your funders with some confidence that they will get a return on their investment. Ideally, the market comps will be significantly higher than the funds you'll need to raise. Thanks. Letters of commitment are great to add to the appendix for the Phase 2 SBIR or STTR. The letters of commitment can be letters of intent to provide funding. These letters confirm that a negotiation is in process and will likely say that the funding is dependent on the Phase 2 success and that the market need still exists. Alternatively, you can get a letter of support for the project, and this shows in-kind donations. So a supporter could provide man-hours, for example, to test or evaluate the innovation, or man-hours to work on formulation or run screens, or alternatively, the supporter could provide materials such as cell lines or the API drug or animal models. In the production and marketing section, you really need to speak about how you're going to reach your direct customer. And for most of you, this will be your pharma partner that you're going to license to. Products should describe the total package of benefits obtained by your direct customer. Place describes the distribution channels. And in fact, this isn't really that applicable for a licensee. So I recommend that you discuss venues for one-on-one interactions where you might interact with a potential licensee or your potential customer. And venues would include the BioInvestor Forum, JP Morgan, and the RESI conference, Redefining Early Stage Investments. For promotions, describe how you will reach your direct customer. How will you communicate with them? Consider direct emails, journal publications, white papers, industry presentations, and booths at meetings as options available to you. And finally, pricing. For pricing, I recommend that you go with comps. Market comps. Has a similar technology been licensed in the last year or so? What were the deal terms? And can you expect to achieve something similar? Resources available to you to try to discover market comps are, of course, the internet. The SEC filings at EDGAR, the 10K annual reports, and the 10Q quarterlies can have great information for you regarding licensing deal terms. You can look at ipsio.com as a source of royalty reporting. And finally, the Global Life Sciences Royalty Rates and Deal Terms Survey from the Licensing Executive Society of the USA and Canada is an incredible resource. And I would recommend joining the society simply to have access to their royalty rates reports. The next section we need to talk about is the revenue stream. So, what are your ways to make money? You can consider discussing a licensing, a joint venture. Perhaps you'll make money by providing a service, or perhaps you intend to become a fully integrated company, in which case you would manufacture and have direct sales, or perhaps have sales through a distributor. So think carefully about, can you really make money? Because an SBIR is about funding a project that's going to be commercialized and make money. So keep in mind that profits are your revenues, which is another word for sales, minus expenses. Okay, the pro forma isn't required in the SBIR application. However, you should do it for your own information and understanding what your revenues look like. This pro forma is taken from the TEDCO example, And I recommend taking a look at their website because they very carefully explain what each item is on this pro forma. This pro forma is pretty simple. The top layer has your revenues and the bottom layer has the expenses. When you're creating your pro forma, make sure that you put in your assumptions at the bottom of the pro forma so that both you and the reader are starting from with the same basis of understanding where these numbers came from. The other thing I'd point out about the pro forma is make sure that your numbers ramp up or ramp down year over year in a rational fashion. So don't just double your revenues every single year and don't keep, for example, your expenses and your rent steady. Expenses are likely to increase, as is your revenue. SBIR doesn't require that you discuss the risks and mitigation, but your reviewer will be grateful to you if you do. So think about what the highest risks are for your particular project. They might be any among scientific risk, development, scale-up, technology transfer, your patent, it may not issue, the clinical trial enrollment and recruitment. It may be regulatory risk or your study design. Whatever your highest, say, 2 risks are, call them out and then speak to how you're going to mitigate them. What's your workaround? How are you going to de-risk these particular elements of your project? A possible route for mitigation is to recruit a highly reputable partner. These could be your CMOs, the CRO, KOL. Any of these can assuage a reviewer's red flags. One of the last elements of your budget is the SBIR fee. Now, I have to say here that the fee is good. You should request all of the fee at 7%. This fee should be called a gift. The SBIR gift can be used to cover market research reports, consultants, and even expenses outside of the United States. So please remember to request the fee. As you're writing your SBIR application, think carefully about the RFP solicitation. Read it carefully and make sure that you've actually answered each question, preferably in order to help out your reviewer. Go back and check again the review criteria and make sure that you've addressed everything that the reviewer is going to be looking for. You don't want to give the reviewer any ammunition to shoot you down. So here's another tool for you. In the NIH Reporter, we've already spoken about that, there's an application called Matchmaker. So if you go to the NIH Reporter, click on Matchmaker tab, you can insert your abstract or some larger text from your application that represents your product. NIH Reporter, which we've already spoken about, you can click on the Matchmaker tab. In the Matchmaker tab, you can insert your abstract or a longer text that fully describes your product. So now it will come back with an analysis that shows funding rates by institute, activity code, and study section. You can use this information so that you can request the best study section for your application in your cover letter. So be thoughtful about your timing for the SBIR application. At T-7 days, I highly recommend distributing your application to 2 trusted colleagues for their feedback. And if necessary, go ahead and put a CDA in place. You want them to provide feedback on the clarity of your application, your rationale, and please make sure there's no grammar typos or inconsistencies within the application. Then, at T-2 days, submit your application. Please do not wait until a few hours before the deadline, because you and everyone else in the nation is going to be trying to submit applications, and the system does get clogged, it gets jammed, and it breaks down. And at 5 o'clock p.m. on the deadline day, they turn the systems off. So if you're stuck in the crowd, unable to get your application in, you're toasted. So please make sure that you submit your application at least a day in advance. Okay. So it's likely that you'll get back comments on your grant if it wasn't funded, but you should please discuss the comments with your NIH program director, and when you make a resubmission, make sure you address each comment thoroughly and diplomatically. If you missed the funding cutoff a second time, go ahead and resubmit a new application. It used to be the case that you could only submit your SBIRs twice, but at this point, they're no longer monitored or countered, so you can submit a new application infinitely. So you notice that revisions are worthwhile for all of the applications in SBIR and STTR. The award rate increases dramatically upon revisions. So here we see the sad death of a project. Can you think about the number one reason why good projects die? I'll tell you, it's because of lack of funding. Think carefully about your funding gaps and how you're going to fill them. NIH and NSF have up to 1 year to issue an award after the announcements. The average time between a Phase 1 proposal deadline and the start of the award is 10.6 months, and the average time between a Phase 1 end and a Phase 2 start is 18.1 months. And this is from the HHS 2012 data. One way to fill the funding gap is to start writing that SBIR Phase 2 proposal well before your funding for Phase 1 runs out, so that you're ready with the submission the second you're able to put it in. So NIH does support their awardees pretty well. For the Phase 1 awardees, there is a niche assistant program that can help you with market analysis of the technology, competition analysis, strategic planning for the technology, and user assessment. There are 177 slots for this program, and it's on a first-come, first-served basis. NIH also has the Commercialization Assistance Program, CAP, for the Phase 2 awardees. It's a 10-month program that helps the company develop its investor presentation. Other learning opportunities for you are provided by the TEDCO workshops. There's the National SBIR STTR Conference in DC, which occurs in May, and Health and Human Services has an SBIR STTR conference in Orlando that occurs in November. You have real people resources in the state of Maryland that you can go to that provide pro bono assistance. These include the Maryland Entrepreneurial Resource List, the Merle Group at TEDCO, the BW Tech, GIC, and FITCI Incubator Directors and Entrepreneurs in Residence. SCORE Mentoring doesn't necessarily focus on biologics or life sciences, but you can find a few people there that do have that expertise. The DC I-Corps program, and of course, SOMAX Consulting, which is me. And I do pro bono work through Merle. And here's a list of SBIR resources that are available to you that you can search and find on the internet. Now that you know all the benefits available to you through SBIR and STTR, I urge you all to submit your grant applications. Phase 1 success rates are about 20%, and these grants provide low, no-cost capital for your company and will position your innovation for fruitful commercialization. Good luck. Thank you for listening to part 2 of this webinar on strategies and resources for strong grant commercialization plans. I urge you to take advantage of your local resources in putting together a successful SBIR or other small business grant application. These grants provide no-cost capital for your company and will position your innovation for fruitful commercialization. Don't forget, success rates are about 20%. Before closing, I would like to again thank the TEDCO Incubator Assistance Fund for their generous support.